Good morning once more. So I'm Miss Chiabi Mildred B, and I am a both cognitive specialist and a QASP-S, which is Autism Service Practitioner Supervisor, and I currently work as a high school inclusion teacher with Charger American International School. So today is actually just a privilege for me to stand before you all to present on a topic that I'm very much passionate about, which is helping teachers, parents, and communities to understand the power of positive behavior support system. Now, before we start, I just imagine always you are in the classroom as a teacher or as a parent at home, and suddenly a child starts crying. Let's say you have 4 kids. A child is crying. Another one is running up and down, screaming all over the place. Another one is walking away from you when you are talking. As a parent, following the traditional ways, the first thing that you have in mind is what? Please, who can tell me? What's the first thing you're going to be having in mind with children having such chaotic behaviors in the house? Is it going to be punishing the child or reinforcing the child or redirecting the behavior? Okay. The traditional way says we're going to punish the child. But then again, what punishment does is it suppresses behavior temporarily. It doesn't teach behavior at all. But reinforcement actually helps shape the brain and also teach a child what is expected of them to do more often. And that is why I stand before you all today to make us understand that when we talk about inclusion, inclusion is not something that is specifically for children with inabilities or with abilities. It is actually something that we have to start practicing in every culture that we find ourselves in. Because when it comes to positive behavior support, it says that instead of punishing a child more often when they do something, what do? Redirect the behavior. Because behaviors are not a problem. Every behavior a child exhibits is a communication. And that goes with every one of us seated here. It's not about when a child is crying, don't be so quick to run and say, why are you crying? You have to do this. You will not have your 2 minutes of play. But the first thing that comes to mind is, why is a child crying? And that is why we're going to be looking deeply into what positive behavior support system is all about today. So when we look at the positive behavior support, I don't know why it's joining. So we say the positive behavior support system is actually a science-based, proactive, and compassionate framework. That is how I'm going to define it. And that helps children, or helps us, educators and parents, to understand why behaviors happen the way they do. What are some of the preventive measures that we can take in order to help stop these behaviors, or how we can redirect these behaviors. We need to understand that when it comes to positive behavior system, it is not about punishing a child. It's not about bribing a child. It is about understanding why this child is screaming, why this child is trying to escape away from the classroom, why this child is trying to, seek attention from you. Like I said from the beginning, every behavior that a child exhibits is communicating something to you. And as parents, as community members, we need to stay on proactive measures and not reactive measures. You don't wait until a behavior happens before you start rushing to see what is actually causing that behavior. All right. So when we talk about the positive behavior system, it combines applied behavior analysis, which is the ABA, trauma-informed CARS, we have inclusion principles, we have person-centered planning, and functional communication, environmental modification as well. Why positive behavior system matters? First, as we said from the beginning, it is a framework that helps us to understand why behaviors happen the way they do and see or identify some of the triggers in that environment in order to create a conducive learning environment for every learner who finds themselves in that environment. And that goes same at home as well. So the first says safety. Children they learn more when they feel safe. Sometimes we feel like if we have to scare a child by screaming or by doing something that is actually kind of scaring to them, they're going to stop doing what we do. But then again, what we simply do is we're modeling a behavior that that child will actually lean on, learn on, and also continue to do that as time goes by. When children feel safe in an environment, they feel loved, they feel accepted, and they feel supported. So they will learn, they will connect better in classrooms. We talk about predictability. Most behaviors happens especially in the classrooms and at home, especially with children, with special needs children, simply because they have no direction. When children know what is coming next, and that goes same with you as well. When you know what you're supposed to do immediately after your, let's say, your breakfast, it makes transitioning very easy for you. And that goes same with students with special need. When their routines are very much predictable, they know that after this, I'm going to this. You don't just wake up and say, okay, math is finished. We have to move to English. Then you will definitely expect a lot of behavioral issues and all that. And that is coming from the fact that they're asking, why am I just switching from here to here with no notice? So children learn better when they have predictable routines. And when I tell parents most often at times, when a parent comes to me in school and say, oh, I have this student, my child is kind of not following routines at home. The first thing I ask, what is the routine the child is having at home? And in most cases, what we feel as parents to do, I know how overwhelming it is for us. But sometimes we need to also understand that we have children who are different from the way a neurotypical person is going to reason or say things. So for that reason, we need to try as much as possible to create very effective and predictable routines. When a child wakes up in the morning, the child already knows that this is what I have to do next. Children learn more and better when they are able to predict their next move. So we have clear expectations. I think Coach Tola, which is actually my able coach there, he mentioned something about using the right language. You don't tell a child, go and pick that thing and come and give me now and go here and go here. You are giving multiple instructions at a particular time. And you expect that child to what? To reply or give you reply that serves the same function for the same behavior, giving them so many instructions at the same time. What do you expect? What do you expect me to do? There is something I talk about when I talk about the leader in me. I say it's one of the habits that we encourage so much is beginning with an end in mind. When you're giving a child instructions, let the child see where these instructions are leading me to. Don't just tell me, do this. So if I do this, where do I get to? There should be a very clear expectations of where you want the child to go. We talk about inclusive participation. Making sure that every child you meet or you have in your classroom or your children at home as well, they do have access to learning. You're not limiting this one and say, oh, because you are this, you're going to receive this and that and that. When this happens, and this happens a lot in the classroom. Because sometimes as teachers, we are tempted to say, oh, you know what? I love this child because the child is chubby, the child is this, the child is that. So we begin to bring along this kind of, exclusive, and then we're choosing other children over others in the classroom. And at times we decide to give some privileges and over some. And that is not what we're encouraging. The positive behavioral support says every child should have access to learning as long as they find themselves in a learning environment, be it at home or in the communities as well. So we have evidence-based reinforcement. You don't just reinforce children anyhow. You have to reinforce children, use reinforcement that are actually based on research. You don't just say, okay, I know that there is actually an incident the other day, when I heard somebody was explaining a scenario base and the person was talking about a reinforcement procedure that they give a child. And the procedure they talked about was using a particular visual to reinforce a child when a child is actually not in their best behavior, which is actually not the right way to do. When a child is having behavior issues or when you want to build a behavior in a child, you are not just going to say, oh, this works. After assessment, what, according to the function of the behavior or what we are addressing, what really works well for this behavior? That's what you have to be thinking about, because whatever consequences that comes after a behavior, be it a good behavior or a bad one, is going to actually determine the likelihood of that behavior in the future. So if you are actually reinforcing a child with wrong reinforcement, you're actually going to make them understand that, you know what? Anytime I'm crying, I just need to, if I want a toy in the house, I just need to throw myself on the floor. My mom will say, oh, come take it. And maybe sometimes, like for example, one of my parents met me some time ago, and she said, I asked her, so what do you do in the house whenever she's crying? She said, really, I don't want noise. So for that reason, Carlos, I just give her everything just to stop the noise. I just don't want noise in my ears. And I said, now, do you know why she has been doing this for this long? It's because you have negatively reinforced her. You have taught her that for you to have access to this thing, all you need is to scream. And I'm going to give you. This is not the best way to do anything that has to do or to replace behaviors or redirect behaviors. So if a child is behaving not well and you want to reinforce the child, make sure that this reinforcement I'm going to give this child, there's going to be a positive output in it. Let the child learn something before they get that reinforcement. So positive behavior support system is saying that instead of punishing a child when they cry, replace the behavior. What do you expect from them? Teach them that replacing skills and let them repeat it, and then you reinforce them. Don't tell them, I will not give you 2 minutes time. I'm going to take away your iPad. No, they don't learn anything from there because it's going to suppress that behavior, but then it will keep occurring again. Emotional well-being. When I talk about this one, I was talking to my head of inclusion last week, and I said something. I said, one thing I've observed with teachers is the fact that we focus on teaching content. We don't focus on teaching or to check to be sure that children are emotionally stable in the classroom. What I do personally as a high school inclusion teacher, working with the big boys and the big girls and all that, sometimes they can be overwhelming with the way they react and how disrespectful they can be sometimes. But then the best way for me to be able to work with them, I told them when I walk into the classroom, the first thing I tell them is, how are you doing today? I'm fine. For me, I'm very fine. I'm ready for the day. What about you? Some of them will be sleeping. Some of them will be yawning. They want to go to the toilet just because they want to escape. And when I see a child behaving that way, some of them will be very aggressive. I will say, I understand, but I want to have a walk with you if you don't mind. So before we settle for intervention, can we have a walk outside? They'll say, okay. I take them for a walk for a few minutes, and then we're back to class. And then we have a talk, and they have to share with me why they're feeling the way they're feeling in the morning. And I reassure them it's okay for you to feel that way in the morning. Because there are certain events which are the background triggers that behavior, that causes them not to want to focus in the class in the morning. But sometimes a lot of teachers don't know. Sometimes as an inclusion teacher, when I walk into the classroom for push-in sessions, I sleep off sometimes. Why am I sleeping? Because teachers just come in, they're focused on the content. They don't care how you feel in the classroom. But positive behavior support system is saying that children learn more when they're in their best emotions. You cannot be pounding or trying to pour knowledge or content into an unstable mind. Even you will not learn anything. So it is saying we need to do what? Focus on the emotional well-being of students to make sure that they are very much stable enough to receive the content that you have. If emotional checks are missing, then content will never be relevant in any way. We talk about the inclusive participation for all. Inclusion is not specifically for special children. Usually I say, when they say define inclusion, I say inclusion is creating an accommodating environment that makes every child, regardless of their abilities, their inabilities to feel loved, accepted, belong, in order to strive or to grow or become the better version of themselves. It's not for special children, and it's not for neurotypical children. They'll say, oh, because this one is special need, you have to this, you have to that. No, it is for all because it makes every child in a learning environment to feel better. And the positive behavior support is not specifically for children with special need. It is for all. Because sometimes even us adults do have behaviors sometimes, you'll be like, you are not in the best of your emotions, you just act anyhow. Now, I won't just come and say, why are you talking like this? No, calm down. I understand the emotions that you're going through right now, but could we speak this way or could we do it this other way? And then it comes the whole situation that rather than you trying to react and then you escalate everything around. So, for you to effectively apply the positive behavioral system, the first thing you need to understand, like I said, why behaviors are happening. We're going to look at the ABC model. The ABC model says that behaviors are going to happen because of antecedent. Now, antecedent is what happened before that behavior. And what are some of the things that can trigger antecedent? Transitioning. You just wake up, a child is playing with a toy. Hi, Ali, we have to go to the playground now. Of course, you just let Ali just start running and all that. They will get frustration at a certain point. We have long verbals as well. Too much talking. You want a child to do something, you don't just give them exactly what they want. You start telling them stories before you. Sometimes it's very boring. It can be interesting to you, but it's very boring to them as well. And we have too much instructions. Too much instructions, as we've said, look at long verbal instructions. Sensory overloaded. We deal with children, actually, the way that their senses react to the light we are seeing here is different. The way they receive sound is different. The way they react to colors around us is different. The way they react also to the noise, the people around us is different. So we need to be very sure that whenever you are getting into an environment, once you've understood your student better, be sure if they do not have or how they react to the sensory overloaded environment. So you can be able to put preventive measures before you take them to, learn in that environment. Difficult task. Most at times, there's one thing I've heard from a lot of my students, because as I said before, I do mentor teachers as well. So I train teachers to become inclusive special educators. And of course, I do train ABA therapists for those who are doing ABAT and all of that. One thing I always tell them is that when they come with complaints and say, oh, Miss Mimi, my parent want my student to write. My parent want my student to do this. My parent want my student to do this. But the question I always go back and ask them is, what do you think about that student? Is the student ready for writing? Because parents sometimes, I understand, they just want the best for their kids. I just want my child to write. My child is 6 years. My child is 8 years. I want my child to be able to write. But the question sometimes we forget to ask ourselves is, based on this child's diagnosis right now, and based on the ability and needs of this child right now, can this child really be able to write? Sometimes I tell parents that writing shouldn't be a priority for your special child. Look at what social or functional communication skills or social skills. That's what's going to help that child to integrate properly into the society. Sometimes you will not be available every time to help support the child. Sometimes they need to feed by themselves. They need to wear the clothes. They need to wash your shoes. They need to wash your plates. But then if you focus too much in academics and for them to write and for them to read and for them to do all of those things, keeping aside all of those others very, very important skills that they need to personally or independently start functioning or in navigating into the society, then really, you are not really helping that child. For me personally, this is my 9 years in this field, and one recommendation I always tell parents is, please, if your child comes to me, I tell you, first thing is, we're going to work so much on the life skills. Life skills are going to be more beneficial now. Secondary should be the academics. So we're going to move to the behavior. Now, antecedent is what happens before this. So what is a behavior? Behavior is a communication, as I said earlier. Behavior is a response to stimulus. Behavior is a response to whatever is happening in this environment. I am talking now because people are listening to me. This is a behavior. I'm portraying a behavior because I have people listening to me. So when we talk about behaviors, what are some of the behaviors that you can see or this can cause? So antecedent can cause calling out, for example, maybe walking away, crying, refusing to walk, or aggressiveness. If you give a child a difficult task, what do you expect? They're going to refuse to walk and they walk away. When you're instructing them too much and they're too confused, they start closing their ears, and then some of them will start crying because they're overwhelming. Now, antecedent means what happens before this. Then when this happens, what do you do? Which is the consequence. Consequences is either you are punishing the child or it's either you are giving a reinforcement. What is a punishment? The punishment we know is not the punishment that we use at home, beating children. Ethically, it's not even allowed to do that. Punishment means maybe taking away free time from a child, giving them extra work because they didn't complete the previous work that you gave them. That is what we call positive punishment. And we have negative by what? Removing their playtime or their excess time and all of that. Reinforcement says anything that you add or anything that you remove in order to increase the likelihood of a behavior. That is what we call reinforcement. And punishment is anything that you add or remove to decrease the likelihood of a behavior. But a positive behavior system says we shouldn't focus on punishment because punishment suppresses the behavior temporarily, and over time, the behavior will succumb. But then again, reinforcement is going to teach the child and prepare the brain for a likelihood of a positive behavior in the future. So whatever consequence that you give a child when they exhibit this behavior is either going to determine whether that behavior disappears or the behavior keeps repeating itself. So when parents are giving consequences to the children, we have to be very careful. We have to look at how is this going to affect the child in the future. I gave an example of a child crying because they want an iPad in the house, for example. You see the child crying and you tell the child, oh, come get this cup and give me, and the child start crying. They want the iPad. The moment they start crying, they say, Kalas, leave it. Come, get your iPad. What have you done? The antecedent here is you've instructed the child to give you an iPad, which the child doesn't want to because they want to give you a cup because they want an iPad from you. They start exhibiting the behavior of crying out, rolling, banking their heads and all that. And then you say, Kalas, come get the iPad. What have you done? You have given a consequence, which is a reinforcement. But what reinforcement have you given that child? Negative reinforcement. What would that child learn from that? That in the nearest future, anytime I want an iPad from you, all I need to do is to scream because it's like you don't like to hear my voice when I scream. So when you are applying or trying to understand behaviors, we say understand the ABC model as well so that you should be able to do what? To avoid reinforcing negative behaviors and doing what? Replacing or redirecting the negative behaviors to the likelihood of what you want from the child. Then we're going to look at the pillar of positive support system. The first pillar says understanding the functions of behavior. ABA tells us that behavior happens for 4 reasons. This is not about special children because when I look at this system and going back to ABA, I call ABA a journey of self-discovery. That is why when I meet some of educators, they say, oh, I don't want ABA. I'm already a SEN teacher. I don't want an ABA. I'm an LES teacher. I don't want ABA. I say ABA is not for children with special needs. It is a recommended intervention service for children with special needs. But every one of us seated here needs ABA. Now, ABA is a way of life. We live ABA every day. We talk ABA every day. But when it comes to having a structure, we know nothing about it. So it helps us to understand why we will just wake up and start crying. Why we will just wake up and start screaming. Why this child will just wake up and start demanding for something that you do not like. That is what ABA is going to teach us. And they say, if this child is exhibiting this behavior, what do I need to do in order to replace or redirect this behavior to the desired behavior that I want? Now we have understanding the functions. It says that if a behavior is happening, it's either a child wants attention or the child wants to escape from work. For those of us in the classroom, sometimes we want to pressure our kids, even at home. You have to do this, you have to do this. Then the child will start what? Escaping. Then we have access to tangible, which is an example of what I gave regarding the iPad. So a behavior is happening. I'm screaming and crying because I want an iPad. So if you give the iPad, what is going to happen? You're going to what? Negative reinforcement. We have sensory stimulations as well. We need to also understand that sometimes when children come to school in the morning, they just don't want to do anything. It's not because they are lazy. I've had teachers who address students in the morning as, this one is depressed. This one is this. They use very heavy language on children. And I have to ask them, if they ask you what is really depression, can you explain what depression is all about? That's not because, then I don't blame them because they do not understand that if a child does not sleep well at night, in ABA we call these certain events, which are the background triggers that triggers a behavior to happen. We have the sensory stimulations, which means that if a child does not sleep well at night, of course, you don't expect that child to be fine in school. If a child has a headache, you don't expect that child to just be smiling and dancing and writing and doing everything in school. If a child is frustrated because of sensory, because of transition, you don't expect that child to be all jolly and all that. You will definitely have to experience a child, and if environment is so sensory overloaded as well, so noisy, they will start screaming and closing their ears and all that. That is what ABA tells us. The functions of behavior. When you understand the functions of behavior properly, you can know the best intervention systems to put in place in order to help support the child. You can never solve a behavioral issue when you do not know the cause of that or the function or what that particular behavior is trying to communicate to you. Then the second pillar is based on preventive measures. It says that we prevent challenging behavior, obviously, by what? By designing or redesigning environment that reduces triggers. When you must have known that, okay, this is what is happening. My child is doing this because they want attention or because they're trying to escape or because of sensory stimulation. Then you know what kind of preventive measures to put in place. So you can ask yourself sometimes because of transitioning, which is going to cause a lot of sensory meltdowns and all that, you're going to look and say, okay, next time I'm going to have visuals. The visuals, don't just tell me what to do. Show me what to do. If you cannot model it practically, at least visualize it for me to see. That is what visual skill just talked about. There is no way you will think that you want to actually redirect behaviors or to give any intervention for children with special needs when there is lack of visuals. The next says first, then board. Most times, children want to take over. They want a reinforcement. I want to go to the playground before I come for math class, but you're going to say, no, you can't have math a playground now. So what am I going to do with you? You're not just going to sit and tell the child, okay, no, finish your math first and before we go. Now, we're going to have a visual of what? The first, then. Or you have the first, because there are two modules. Either you're using the first, then, only for children who are not really familiar with the system. But when they get into the system, you can use the three modules who says the first, next, and then. So first, you're going to do this. Start with prioritizing the task. What is important now? I'm going to do this now, then this, and then before you get your preferred task or preferred reinforcement that you want. Visualize it to them as well. Predictable routines. I've talked about that before. Children learn more where they can predict their next steps. So make sure that you put all the structures of whatever is going to help support a child in a day. Clear expectations. We talked about that as well. Make sure that you reduce your language and then what? Have an end in mind. Where am I going to? If I do this, where is my landing space? Breaking tasks into smaller units. We call this in ABA task analysis. Breaking tasks into very smaller units, and you only teach the next step when the child must have mastered the first one. So before I move to this, sometimes you're going to teach a child, a neurotypical child, how to wash your hands. You will just say, oh, mama, enter the bathroom, open the tap, wash your hands, take soap, and do this. They're going to do it as ABC. But if you have a child who is actually on the spectrum, the child will not use the same model to learn. So in ABA, we're going to take washing of hands as a routine. And then we break the task into very smaller units, which we are going to decide either to use a backward chaining in teaching the child how to wash your hands, or we're going to use a forward chaining in teaching them how to wash their hands. Now it says we have to break down the task in order to what? To reduce anxiety and also to reduce task avoidance. Sensory-friendly environment classrooms as well. Sometimes our classroom, when I walk to classroom, I remember last week when I walked into one of my the classes in the school, and I saw the classroom, it was so overwhelming even for me. Multicolor. So much color. And this is a preschool. When a classroom is so full of colors, lightnings, and all that, it distracts students a lot. It causes a lot of behavior, a lot of sensory behaviors as well in children. So if you are having a child in the house, you just want to set an environment for them to learn, please make sure that environment is very unique when it comes to colors. Don't overwhelm them with colors and stuff. Because sometimes even if everybody loves colors, I mean, when we go to the market, we'll buy from green, all the 12 colors. We'll buy green, red, yellow, blue, purple, everything. But we actually enjoy specific colors because they're not too bright, because of how much it can affect us. That goes the same with children. So we talked about a well-prepared environment eliminates 70% of the behaviors. Perfectly right. I'm talking out of experience. So we're going to move to pillar 3 that says teacher replacement skills. I always tell my teachers, don't say no to a child without replacement. Because for me as a mom, when I tell my kids no, my kids, the first thing they ask me, but why? And of course, they are very right. They are right to ask me, but why? If a child is climbing on a table, jumping on the table, instead of saying, don't jump on the table, the child is going to go down. But have you taught the child anything? You have only taught the child not jumping on the table. So what next? If I'm not jumping on the table, what should I be doing? Always make sure that you replace a skill that you don't like to the desired skill that you think is beneficial to the child. Now, we talk about functional communication. I need a break. I am tired. When you are actually teaching a child, replacing skill, a child is always screaming when they want a break. They don't know how to ask you that they want a break. What is your role as a parent? What is your role as a teacher? Is to teach them how to ask for break rather than crying. Sometimes we call that in the behavior reduction as a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. So I'm going to teach you how to ask for break by telling me I need a break. Or if you do not communicate properly, it's either you're using your AAC or you're using your PECS book to tell me I need a break. And I'm definitely going to reinforce that by giving them a break. Then we have coping skills as well. We teach them breathing. Now, I always say that you can't give what you don't have as educators, as parents. You cannot give what you don't have. Not giving what you don't have means that if you don't know how to manage or to cope when you're actually in a very stressful environment or situation, you can never teach a child how to cope as well. That is why I always talk about leadership, parents being leaders, educators being leaders, as what? Practice the act of self-leadership. You cannot give what you don't have because children lean on what we show them. Children lean on what we practice. So if I am frustrated, instead of me sitting and breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll start screaming, what have you just taught your child? Next time, if you're overwhelmed, just scream. That's what you've taught them. So we first need to learn the breathing techniques or the coping skills so we can be able to teach them. Self-regulation as well. And that goes the same with the coping skills. So if I am overwhelmed, for example, now, maybe by the task, I don't want to do the task. All I need to do is to cry. All I need to do is to slap someone. Now, I always say that whatever you teach a child behind closed doors, when no one is seeing you, is going to be exhibited in public when everyone is seeing the child. And a child is a reflection of what is being taught to them behind closed doors when no one is seeing. I always tell my teachers, if I walk to an environment and I see that the child is panicking because of how you treat them, I will know. You don't have to tell me. Because if you slap a child in private, the child is going to slap someone in public. So instead of being so hard on them, you have to teach them how to regulate their emotions. So even if you're getting frustrated, it's okay to get frustrated away from them. But when you approach them, please be kind to them. To go through emotional stress is not ABC. It's very stressful. Then we have social skills as well. Teaching them the ability to be able to what? To socialize wherever they go. Now, whether they are verbal or non-verbal and stuff, you have to use different ways of teaching them. You can use the expressive language or methods of teaching them how to, interact in the society, or you can use also the receptive. Some children are very good in receptive. They don't really need the expressive at all. So we have emotional recognition. Teach children how to recognize how they feel. If you do not know when you are sad, most of the times these children do not know. That's why you will see some of them when they're overwhelmed, they are crying, laughing, and playing at the same time. What is happening? They do not understand what is happening to their system at that particular point in time. And what is your responsibility as an educator is to teach them how to identify and communicate those skills to you or the feelings to you whenever they are in that position. That is why you have to make yourself a safe space. Let them understand how safe they can be beside you, and they will definitely do well. I'm talking out of experience because I've met students who they say, oh, this one has never been, she has trauma issues, she has these issues and this and that. But when I get into the environment, I have my own ways of doing things because I cannot do anything when I'm overwhelmed. I make sure that I have to check to tell me, how do you feel? I see if I can help you in any way that I can. So if we don't teach skills, we cannot, expect anything from our children. So we model the behaviors that we want. So pillar 4 says reinforcement. I think we've talked about reinforcement. We're just going to rush through this. Reinforcement builds behavior. Punishment only stops behavior temporarily. Now when we talk about the reinforcement procedures, what are we talking about? These are the different types of reinforcements that we have. So when you're talking about reinforcement, thinking of kind of reinforcement that you give your children, please, the first one we call this a token system, which is actually giving a child a token every time they perform a good task. Remember we said positive behavior system is focused on reinforcing positive behaviors and redirecting the unwanted behaviors, not punishing. So in the token system, it says that you're going to write number 1, and I'm going to give you 1 token. So you have 3 tokens out. Well, after you finish your 3 tokens, you're going to get your reinforcement. Have your choice of whatever you want to do. Now we have the social praises. Most of us parents do not praise our kids enough. That is why when some go to school and then you tell them, good job, they are super excited. They want you to do that every year and then. But I will tell you, you see the word good job, fantastic, bravo, it works magic. When you're working with the early years children, sometimes when you don't say it, they will look at you by themselves and they'll say, good job. Or they will ask you, did I just do a good job? So always make sure those positive reinforcement, even if you tell a child, this thing is down, pick it up and give me, wow, that was good listening. Thank you so much. It goes a long way because you are teaching them the act of what? Gratitude is very important. And we have activity reinforcements. Activity reinforcers. Learn to give children activities that are actually reinforcing to them. You want a child to write or to do functions. When the child is even struggling to do multiplications and you want them to do functions, how do you expect them to begin to solve functions where they cannot even solve multiplications? Give reinforcing, something that really motivates them to want to stay on task. And this is our core responsibility. What does my child really likes to do? What kind of learning do they really prefer than the one that I teach them? We have the sensory breaks, very important. Sensory breaks, the movement breaks, they're very good because it actually regulates what? The nervous systems. So please don't keep children too long seated. It's not good. It's not beautiful for them. And actually it's kind of, I always call it a sign of bullying. So don't put them too long seated. Make sure that you try as much as possible to give them time to run. You punish a child and say you sit there for 1 hour. What is a child with special need doing for 1 hour? They're struggling with a lot of emotions in them that do not really deserve them to go through that. We have the stickers, we have the stars, we have the points as well. Some of you use class dojos and all of that. Behavior-specific reinforcements as well. I want you, okay, Ali, I want you to clap your hands after me. Is that okay? All right, let's go. Clap your hands. That is what we call behavior-specific reinforcement in children. With that, it helps them, it builds their confidence, and also it gives a clear expectations of what is wanted from them. We have pillar 5 who says, consistency and collaboration. Consistency must come with what? With teachers. Parents, I always say, teachers have just 30% role to play in your child's life. The greatest role model for every special child or even a neurotypical child in this life is their parent or their caregiver. So if you are not working with teachers, collaborating with teachers, with the inclusion team, with the behavior therapists, with the parents, as teachers as well, as Coach Tola said, volunteers, the boss assistants, and the leadership team in the school, you are not going to be able to build a positive behavior system for your child. And the school system also lacking all of these will not be able to have a strong, positive, or inclusive, learning environment for everyone in the school. So we have, how do we build this supportive system? First, we have to use the universal design learning, which says it provides multiple ways for a child to learn. The first year we have learning. Most of the times you say, my child cannot learn this, my child cannot do this. But what happens with learning is that if a child cannot learn the way you teach them the way they want to be taught. I will tell you for a fact that for my 9 years being a special need educator, I have not seen any child who is not capable of learning a skill, no matter how bad the behavior might seem to look like to the society. Every child has an ability to learn something. If a child is not learning, means that you are actually not teaching them the way they want to be taught. And the reason why we have so many different learning styles. So make sure that you know and understand what my child prefers. Then we have engaging. When my child is learning, what am I doing? Do I just throw them iPads? Colors, do ABC, watch this and that. Where is the engagement? Children learn more when they feel like they are very much involved with their parents and their teachers. They stay motivated. Like my children will say for sometimes, they'll be like, Mommy, I want you to come and play with us. Go play your ball there. Why do you want us to play alone? Come play with us. When they say that, I just understand that learning at all, no matter how much I know they want to learn with us, but then if I'm not engaging with them, I know that it's very boring. And they might not learn anything. They might just do anything fast just to finish because they have a task in front of them. Demonstrate understanding. Model what you expect of the child. Don't demand what you want from the child. Model, teach them, show them what they want. If you want to write letter A, Ali cannot write A. Write the A with them together to let them understand better or how to write it. Then we've talked about, okay, this was actually the beginning of what ABA is all combined on. But we're just going to talk about this. Now, just give me a minute to see. Oh, please, can you come for a minute? Oh, I opted it. Where is she? What is she? Okay, I don't know, I needed somebody to come help me, by the way, so I will just skip it because I'm almost done. So, what I wanted to end by saying is that when it comes to positive behavior system, you just do not need to pressure children. You just do not need to force children to fit into a particular box or system that they've... Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes, please, can you go to the next, please? Thank you. Can you just go to the next? Or use it? It's okay. Okay. All right. So you just don't need to force children to fit into a particular system that was never built with them in mind. That's not inclusion. Inclusion is not just marking every child present in the classroom. It is making sure that you are able to identify every learning needs of every learner in your classroom, teach them the way they want to be taught, differentiate learning, differentiate instructions, but with a mindset that every child in this classroom has the ability to learn. That is what the positive behavior system is teaching us. And we say we have new innovations actually in the positive behavior systems. What's new? We have the modern strategies that elevates the behavior system. We have the teach-based visuals as well, iPads, the AACs, and also class dojos. That's for the kindergarten teachers and the early years teachers. So we have wearable sensory devices as well that help children, of course, to be able to regulate their emotions. We have the AI-based data trackings. We have the interest-based interventions, and we have collaboration digital, which is IEP. Of course, making sure that IEP, for those who do not know, is called Individualized Educational Plan, which is actually built on addressing the educational difficulties of children in a learning environment. We have gamified reinforcement systems as well. And then we're going to end this by saying that positive behavior system is not about changing the child, like I said. You don't change the child, don't change their form. But what are you supposed to do is about changing the environment. Because as we have learned, positive behavior system is what understanding why behaviors happen the way they happen and what you're supposed to do in order to redirect or to teach them the preferred behaviors. When we support the child's needs, we support their potentials as well. I always say, as teachers, as parents, if all you see in a child is problem behavior, you have a problem, not a child. Because when you walk into an environment, you see children struggling with any kind of emotions or any kind of inabilities or disabilities, the first thing you should identify is your strength. Because the strengths are going to help, bring them out and also to learn better. Then the last but not the least, we say together, we can build learning spaces where every student, regardless of their abilities or inabilities, are able to strive and do better. So I hope as we go home today, at least we'll understand better what a positive behavior system is. Thank you so much for listening.